All right, let's talk about UIView animations, and this is kind of the icing on the cake in terms of your user interface. You can really make some things kind of transition in smoothly. And to do that, we need something to play around with. And you can see I've got a back button and a forward button over here, both UI buttons, which is actually something we haven't really talked much about in this tvOS Fundamentals series. So even though the code's already written, let's kind of step through it real quick. And then if you guys want to just skip forward to the UI animate stuff, well, it should be obvious. When I start typing it, it'll be somewhere right down here. Basically, I'm just setting up a frame for the first button here, this back button, and you can see that the rectangle is passed into the initializer for UI button, and I'm kind of tucking this off this. Actually, the X and Y here, I don't even really care about at this point. I'm setting them down here with the dot center property of the button, and I always find this a little bit easier than to try to go ahead and do it here in the frame. And one reason why is, if I did something like self.view .frame.width divided by 2, I would actually have to offset this by the width of the object in terms of, and this is just something you have to do when you're setting up the frame. You have to go like minus 200 here. Okay, otherwise it's kind of pushed off center. Okay, so you got to take that into account. But if you just, if you kind of ignore these two properties for right now and then just set them down here, it's actually setting the center point of the button. And you're going to see that again when we actually use the animations. Otherwise, a lot of this stuff is pretty obvious. Set title color dot white. This is the state. And of course, you can just kind of hover over here and check out the descriptions for each one of these. Gray when it's in its normal state. Set the title back. I don't know why I'm screaming at people there. And then again, here's the center, and then the alpha I'm going to set to 0 initially, and of course that's going to be something that we use with the animation property. And then I just went ahead and put in here the code to make sure that you actually are on the TV. Well, you guys know you are, right? If you're making a tvOS only app, but if you were going to use some of this code for iOS as well, which it all works for iOS, then in that case, just here's some extra bit of code that is going to be helpful for you. Just instead of using primary action triggered, okay, for detecting when the user has touched the button, on iOS you'd use touch up inside. So let's just put a little note here that just says for iOS, right? And again, for good measure, I put in here just a little bit of code for adjusting the font. I think that everything looks great as is on tvOS. It's the kind of the default properties for buttons look really good, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. And if you're kind of if you're if you want to appease Apple in terms of the appearance of your app, go with what they basically what they recommend. All right, and then the same thing over here. We've got a forward button, and we're setting up, all the same stuff over there. So let's take a look at the code that we're going to write for moving these things into play, because they are tucked off screen right now. Okay, we're going to write UIView.animate, and as soon as you start doing that, you'll get some options over here. Let's go for probably the most option-filled one, with duration, delay, options, and then we'll even tuck in there a completion handler for this guy. So for the duration, let's just make it a smooth, even 1 second. We don't need to delay this, but kind of goes without saying what that does if you wanted to delay it. Then for the options, go ahead and write dot and then curve. You can see some of the options you over here. Let's just go for curve ease out. So it'll just kind of ease out at the end. And then for animations, this is the block where you actually put in the properties that you want to animate. So it might be a little bit easier. Let me just hit return. There we go. Okay. And kind of hold that thought over here. Actually, what happens if I hit, don't worry about it. We'll kind of leave this dangling for right now. All right, so again, here's where we're throwing in what we want to actually happen. So we're going to put in here self.forwardButton.center, okay? And this is where we move this into the actual center of the screen. So we're just adjusting the CG point value of this. And that is one of the properties that you are able to animate. So again, we're going to put this right dead center, so half the frame width, and then for the y-axis, self.view.frame.height divided by 2. Okay, and remember too, we also made this invisible initially because the alpha is down at 0, so we're going to put the alpha at 1, and that'll fade that up. And all right, now for the completion handler over here. So this is what you would want to happen if you wanted this to happen after the animation occurs. Okay, so go ahead and delete that closing parentheses, put a comma over here. And I'll show you how to write this without the completion as well. But go ahead and write it in completion, and then opening squiggly bracket, put in here finished bool, and then go ahead and put that bracket down there that wrote itself in there. And then put in your closing parentheses right there. And inside of here, what we could do is we could just write another UIView animation block to move in the back button, okay? So in this time around, we'll just go with kind of the simpler version of these. So it's going to be with duration. So we're just putting here the time interval. Let's go ahead and throw in 1 second again. Could be decimals though if you want it to be. And then let me just hit return on that. Let's see if it fills itself in. You know, that's not what my notes have. So let's do this. Let's put in here dash void in. Okay, and then we're just going to kind of go do a little cutting and pasting here. All right, so here's what you would want to include if you didn't care about a completion at all. So let's change this to back button, and for setting the Y position, let's go ahead and put that in parentheses, and then we'll just subtract 200 from that. And let's not push that to the TV above the mantle. Let's put it to the simulator. How fancy. He's got a mantle. Right. Okay. I'm also wearing a top hat and a monocle. Okay, here we go. This is the big test. Probably should pause it. Okay, all right, so you saw that one. There you go. They came in there. Let's now another cool thing about tvOS is it does take care of you don't have to do any code for kind of panning between these two buttons. It even makes a little noise for you too. So you can just see I'm just holding down the option key and I'm not even pressing down on the touchpad here. I'm just going back and forth. So you don't have to worry about programming that stuff in. Of course, if I tap on it, you can see that it says button tapped. I guess I kind of glossed over that as well, didn't I? I didn't really talk much about the target here, which is what happens when we actually tap the button, and that is right down here at the bottom of the screen. So to leave you guys in suspense for a very long time, there you have it. That is how we animate things and some buttons. All right, that'll do it for this video.